Hello. Happy you could join us today. This is going
Hi,
to be
thank
an
you,
interesting
and welcome
discussion.
everyone. I'm glad you joined me for this interesting discussion. I want to explain my background. My name is Melissa. I have light brown skin. I'm Latino with light brown hair, with gold earrings, hoop earrings, and a brown shirt that's short sleeve, and a gold watch. I'm in front of a white wall with a peacock feather picture, and I'm going to turn it over to you guys so you can explain yourselves.
Hi, my name is Mallory, and I am a brown person with short brown
Hi, I'm
hair.
Mallory. I have short brown hair, curly. I'm in front of a white wall with a window with some drapes.
Hi, my name is Summer, and I am sitting here, and behind me in my living room, there is a white couch, and different musical instruments are hanging on my wall, and there is a picture frame right behind my head. I am wearing a light jean blouse button up with earrings, and I have my hair in a bun.
Great. And we have a special guest joining us today, right over here. So I'm going to describe our guest. Would one of you like to do the honors?
Summer here. Sure, we've got Mother Nature on display showing herself. It's a close-up view of a plant blossoming with large fronds and some smaller leaves poking out as well. It's set in a shady space, so near the front there is some shade on the plant, and behind the plant in the background there is live oak trees with gray clouds. Looks like it might rain soon, and the sun is setting, so the light is dimming.
Oh, it's great. It's so nice to have Mother Nature join us. I think this is the first time Hangouts have has ever had a picture just like this one, but it definitely goes along with our theme with nature therapy and nature in general. And it's a new concept to many, including myself, until recently, thanks to Summer. So we're definitely going to hold off on this. And I'm just going to allow you to each introduce yourselves and your background in the field and what got you into this topic in the first place.
Mallory, would you like to start? Mallory here. Yes, I have always loved nature growing up. I have always felt at home being outside, camping. That's a space where I've always felt very grounded, but I didn't know what to call that feeling. And then as time went on, I did go to graduate school and I got into the study of eco psychology and how people connect with nature. And I realized that that's its own practice and a whole world I had not ever heard of. So I took some classes and got really into it. There's a lot of people out there who are very qualified with experiences with nature, and I went about that journey myself. I actually did struggle with depression at a period. I was living in New Mexico in Santa Fe, and I was close by to the mountains. I spent so much time in nature, and I felt that nature, that background really helped me heal. I do offer ecotherapy circles now with the community and hold space for community members to gather and be one with nature. And also, I did want to add to what I just shared. Melissa did mention that eco psychology and forest bathing is a new concept. So I do just want to share that the practice of connecting with nature is not new. It's actually very natural. It's embraced in a lot of communities who have had various ways of connecting with nature over time. It's just now it has this name, but it's an ancient tradition and practice that's been used throughout the years.
Thank you for clarifying that. Yes, Summer. This is Summer signing. And I have similar parts in my journey. I grew up in the land of Timuan, indigenous peoples land. And my father was a biologist and he studied the forest and wildlife. And so when I grew up, I was always with my father and I was following him around and I always felt comfortable in nature. And then being deaf, I went into school and that transition from nature to technology and the world and interacting with humans and civilization and getting immersed in that was part of my journey. So as I was going to school, I felt like I wanted to, in some ways, get connected back to nature. But of course, the world tells you that it's so hard when you're deaf to even get a job. So I decided to go down the path of expressive therapy, psychology, art therapy, which is a little bit related. But as life leads you down the path, I definitely became more immersed with film and teaching American Sign Language and deaf studies. So I went along that way and I started increasing awareness. You know, we all have that work life balance. And I felt like mine was really off kilter and I was working all the time. And all of a sudden, I started experiencing anxiety and mental health issues, and this was new for me. So I went to therapy sessions with different therapists, deaf therapists, hearing therapists, and I sat there thinking, what is going to make me feel good? And being outside, camping, I'd always want to get out in nature. And I started researching and I started finding out that forest therapy was out there and they actually had a training program. So I got in touch with someone, I know Mallory was studying it, but at the time when I was going through it, it wasn't accessible. So I'm glad that the door has been open and it's a lot more accessible moving forward. So I did become certified in forest therapy, and I decided from there that I didn't want to have technology holding me back again. I really wanted to form my own business into nature therapy and work with guiding. So that's the work that I'm doing in this profession.
Melissa signing here. Both of you mentioned a struggle with mental health. I know depression was mentioned, and so is anxiety. Nature was healing for the both of you. If you don't mind sharing a little bit more about that, what do you think it is about nature that heals? Is it your mental state out there in nature that is calming, or is there something in nature that really does contribute to your healing?
I I can go. This is summer. I I've been thinking a lot about this, and there's scientific evidence that backs this up, but not everybody follows the science. And of course, there's the force of energy, and there's that spiritual aspect that melds with the science. People need nature. They need nature to thrive, just like we need the air to breathe or we need the water that's around us. We need to be outside. It gives us that feeling of being alive and being out in the trees. There is a chemical, phytocides, that's a chemical that is found in the air when you're walking through the trees give them off, and it gives you so many benefits. And I can give you a couple of those benefits. So, of course, one of them is the mental health aspects. As far as cancer goes, it does help eradicate the cancer cells. And I'm not sure if many of you have noticed, but media is showing a lot more these days on how trees have this widespread and very deep knowledge that they hold within their root system and how they communicate and support each other. There's a lot more healing properties and knowledge that's found within them that science is still discovering. And I feel it grounds us in spiritual ways. For so many of us, we need healing. And so we can see that spiritual aspect and that scientific aspect both melding, and that works for me.
Mallory here. And to add, I think nature reminds me to be present. What it comes down to, I think it's pretty simple for me. It just reminds me, even being outside for only 15 minutes, maybe sitting in my backyard, I have a balcony that outlooks some trees. And I may share a little bit. I know I talk a lot about ecotherapy, and some people express some reticence. Maybe they haven't had a positive experience with nature. They feel uncomfortable or unsure imagining to be out in nature means you have to go backpacking and some wild terrain. Actually, forest therapy is whatever suits you, whatever you feel comfortable with. Your time with nature could be something as simple as sitting on your front porch, looking at trees. If it feels good, then that's what it is. That is nature therapy for you. So whenever I am outside, and I am smelling all of the aromas, the fresh air, feeling the breeze on my skin, feeling the warm sun, being able to gaze upon all of the visual stimulation, seeing birds, perhaps seeing a sunset, all of those sounds that are surrounding me, all of my thoughts that may be racing settle. If I'm on my phone or scrolling through my social media or at home thinking about all the concerns I have, all it takes is for me to be outside, perhaps for just 15 minutes, and it's very settling. I think it's the magic of nature. You know, I think if you're not sure, if you're not a believer, if you're watching this, go out for maybe 20 minutes and then come back in and let me know how you feel.
So the phytosides that you mentioned, I did just learn about that through forest bathing experience that I had with you, Summer. And it made sense to me because even before that, I would always feel a little bit high when I would walk through the forest. And I always thought it was because of my body moving or because just being out in the woodsy air, maybe the altitude. But I really was taken back. I was like, oh, this really is a word. This is a chemical that does exist, that gives you something. Just like oxytocin is good for us, serotonin, all these things are good for us. So all these feel good chemicals, and it's really powerful. I'm thinking to myself, wow. And just like as far as a lot of people are talking about with the health and medical issues, like you were mentioning cancer, it's good to encourage people to go out and do this. So is it just, let me ask you, is it just forest bathing, or does this work in tandem with other treatments?
Mallory here. I think it's whatever works for you. I wouldn't say that forest bathing solves everything. If it suits you and it meets your needs, then I think that's great. That's what it is. Forest bathing or nature therapy can be supplemental to other types of treatments or therapies, or it can be exactly what you need. It's up to you.
Yeah, this is Summer. I also wanted to mention I still struggle with anxiety and things like that from time to time. And forest therapy does make me feel better, but in some situations, there are times where I can really hit a wall. And I realize that I need to process it and I need to talk with a therapist or just another human. So there's different ways that we can do this, like somatic therapy, which is body movement, dance therapy, drums, and working with music and different types of simulation like that will help push you and move you, and it'll allow you to analyze these things that are going on. We're really complex, particularly when it goes to our mental health. We have layers of things and different things that trigger us to feel depressed or just not function as well as we could. And I also wanted to mention that when we're thinking of forest therapy, people are going to ask you to go and they're going to be guiding you. And of course, yes, there's one reason, just like Mallory mentioned, you want to get out in nature. And I know some people are scared or some people just aren't familiar with being out in nature. So a trained, certified guide or someone who has a degree and has studied these things, their job is to create that space, that soft, comfortable space for you to go out there, as well as model what a healthy human being, human and nature relationship and connection would look like. For example, if you're kind to people, you do volunteer work, let's say you go to a senior citizens home and you do work there, it's the same feeling as if you're out in the river or you're out in the streams or you're getting that reciprocity. Whenever you give something, you're going to get that in return. And I often stress to people and I remind people, and hopefully as a guide, I model this as well. You know, consent culture is very important these days. And I always ask for that permission with anyone that I'm with. Or if I'm with a tree, I ask for that permission. Can I sit here? And we have that reciprocity together. So I feel like we are establishing that support system. And so it's that spiritual contemplation that I always take with me when I'm out there. So the forest is the therapist, and the guide is just the person that opens the doors.
Thank you. Melissa signing here. Do you mind sharing the difference between forest therapy and forest bathing? Is that the same thing or is there a difference? Mallory signing it. I would say it's the same thing, I guess. So, ecotherapy or nature therapy are really umbrella terms. Forest therapy or forest bathing is under ecotherapy. There's all types of ecotherapy. For example, aromatherapy. Um, is usually associated with nature, horse therapy, wilderness therapy, where you go out and you do maybe whitewater rafting or some of those activities like backpacking. There's a lot of different ways to connect with nature. And I do want to add to Summer's remarks, it makes me think of when I think about framing connecting with nature, oftentimes we look at nature as a way, as something that's separate from us. For example, I've noticed a lot of people share, including myself sometime, people saying things like, "Oh, I really need to get away. I want to go camping. I want to go out and get away." And when you say get away from your life and go out to nature, what if when you go to nature, you go home? What if that's where your home is? That's your heritage. That's where you are from. You've come from nature. Nature's been a part of you, and you are a part of nature. There is a term called anthropocentrism, which means that humans above all species. And I think a lot of us do believe that we've been colonized to believe that we are the most important species, the smartest, while animals and other pets are subjugated to us. But biocentrism indicates that we rely upon one another. We are interdependent with other species. We need
Mhm.
each other in order to have that ecodiversity. Oh, is that a new sign? I usually sign this for interdependent.
Oh, I just feel like I just signed this because I feel like we're equal.
Well, exactly. We need each other to survive and to thrive as well.
So let me ask you, what does a forest bathing experience look like? I mean, I know for me, definitely, it's not like taking a bath. It's not a bathtub in the middle of a forest. That does sound nice, though. Actually, I really would love that. But what does that experience look like? If I say I want to go forest bathing, what would I do?
Summer here, forest bathing and I think forest therapy are really interwoven. They're quite similar. Ecotherapy, I also think they share some commonalities. Of course, there are different philosophies and different training programs that back each one of these arenas. But for me, my training really gets into my training sequence starts with welcoming everyone and asking for permission to enter the forest and then mentioning the indigenous lands that we are standing on. And then from there, all of the thoughts that we have when we're arriving in a new space, I do ask for thoughts to then transition to the body so that embodiment happens. And that's where breathing work comes in, which helps everyone to settle our mind with our body. And then after that, we will have a series of invitations. And we go through the invitations where we start with maybe what movement we notice. We may spend 5 or 10 minutes doing that. And then if we're in a group, we'll disperse, explore our area, come back, share what we've seen. And then at the end, we will express gratitude and celebrate our harvest. And we will use local teas and talk about edible plants that we may have identified in the space we're in. And then we close our session. And so that's usually for general guiding the routine or the experience that we share.
It's a beautiful experience. Mallory, did you want to add anything? This is Mallory. I know for myself, I like to forest bathe alone and I like to walk out in the forest and be out in nature. And I let go of the intent or the goal that I want to arrive at this final destination. What I do is I just walk and I take my time and I feel the spot that I'm in and I feel how good it feels. And I feel that if something is pulling me towards it, then I'll go over there and I'll sit down by a tree. I love sitting down with a tree behind me and the branches coming all the way down. I feel like I'm getting a hug. I feel supported and just sitting there. Sometimes I'll sit there for a short period of time. Sometimes I'll sit there for a couple hours and I'll think and then I'll just relax and sit there and then I'll start thinking again. And that's how I usually force bathe. That's my process.
Melissa here. Very, very cool. When I go hiking, and I do go hiking quite a bit, I do try to automatically set my phone in a different space and pay attention to my surroundings. However, I feel like with the forest bathing experience, it took it a notch further. So it wasn't just hiking and paying attention to my surroundings, but it also required me to stop and observe. So I noticed things like the nuance in color for plants that I saw. Also, touch is encouraged. So when a tree is passed, reaching out to touch it. And I admit at first I was a little skeptical, and I thought I would give it a try and be open-minded. But over time, as I was touching the tree, I can't describe it. It did feel like there was some type of connection having that moment of touch. And I thought about the tree and how long it had been here and what it might have seen, and enjoy the fresh air and all of the other pieces that go along with the surroundings. I remember I was blown away quite a bit with some of the things that Summer collected from the area. So, for example, she made a delicious tea, and I really thought it was from a tea bag that she had steeped, and she said that no, it was from sage that was harvested from the local land. So, all of those pieces helped me really think about how much we all don't pay attention to what is already out there in nature. It's really amazing.
Yes, I want to add to that too. This is Mallory. You can feel the energy from the trees, and I think that is. I have a really cool story. I'm sure Summer already knows this one. There's a certain tree in Africa called the bonobo tree, and I've done some research, and I'm sure they're all over. But this tree has almost like a Wi-Fi system, this own way of communicating. So let's say a giraffe starts to eat the tree will create a scent that'll scare the animal away. It also sends the message to other trees that there's a predator eating our leaves, and so they'll be able to release that scent ahead of time. So we usually think that we communicate, but animals and plants can't. But they do have their own communication system, and I thought that was really neat.
Wow. Summer, do you have any favorite stories that you want to share? Summer here. Yes, actually, the reason why I am so passionate and want to continue to go even further into this, I started probably about a year and a half ago, but only more curious. When maybe work and life is frustrating and it gets frustrating. For me, sometimes I admit I get nervous, normally when you assume responsibility for people's experience and the group of people you have with you have a variety of backgrounds and you're not sure if they will or how they will connect with nature. And sometimes emotional responses occur, and there's always the risk of physical harm. And what keeps me going out of all of that is the forest knows what everybody needs. I am just working in partnership with the forest. I am there in nature, just along the journey, and it feels very confidence boosting. When you have somebody to lean on, that's to me what the trees are. The trees are that for me, and I think not just for me, but for you all as well.
Yeah, I think that both of you mentioned that we are nature, right? We shouldn't view this as an escape or the special thing that we're doing. We should make the time for that frequently. So, how do the both of you stay connected with nature every day? And do you do this every day? Or what do you do to fit this into your daily lives? This is Mallory. Really, I go outside. I walk my dog every day. And I don't have to go hiking every day. Sometimes I'll just walk through the woods near my apartment. And I know, Melissa, you talk about intentionality a lot. And just like Summer's forest bathing seems a lot more intense and in depth because she does this with the intention of connecting with nature. And I think that's what makes it so intentional. And so if I want to connect with nature, I take the time to walk and I do it with intention and I allow my dog to lead me and I'll walk along and I'll just use all of my senses, my smell, my touch, my taste, and I just go in there and it's just like this huge shot that you get just from nature, just a huge boost.
Summer here, I'd say my response is similar. My life is not always a strict routine. Sometimes I do want to input some routine in it, and sometimes life just goes and there's going to be variety. So in the morning, I while I'm awake, I usually could capitalize on that opportunity to be most productive. I usually instead spend morning time for my self-care and my mental healing. I was drinking coffee for a period there, and I've transitioned into supporting local businesses who grow natural products, or I collect those products myself. And I started to drink more tea and sit outside. I have a sitting spot, which is what forest therapists call it, where you sit for 20 minutes and that's all you need to do. You can
That's
do
it.
that on a daily basis or every other day, just as much as you can.
So let me ask you another question. Maybe it's a random question, but let's say you live in a city, like New York City, for example, and there's trees all over the place, but how do I find my nature fix? I mean, I know that there's Central Park, of course, right? Does that count?
Oh, yeah.
What are some other alternatives? Let's say if we live in a busy city and there's no trees around.
Mallory here. I do remember I read somewhere and I thought this was really cool. If you see something, whether it be a picture or a video, or and, even if it's on an electronic device, if it's something that's beautiful, that's meant to be focused on nature, not just something in the background, but as you gaze upon something that is capturing nature, it can trick your brain a little bit. So it may not be the exact same as getting out in the real experience, but there are still some advantages from gazing upon it with your brain. And I also think that you can decorate your home with houseplants. You can put up pictures of plants. My desktop always has some sort of picture of nature, some image of nature. So when I turn off this Zoom session, for example, I'll be able to see an image of nature. When I go outside and gather plants, I can use those for herb baths. So you could actually have the scent of nature in your bathtub. There are a lot of ways to be able to do that.
Those are really good tips. And this is Sarah. I think Mother Nature maybe wants to say a couple comments, so let's take a look at it. Just all of us can gaze at Mother Nature and observe and see whatever Mother Nature maybe communicates with all of you. So, do you want to take a moment? Does everyone have time for that?
Absolutely. That's a great way to wrap up. Mallory here. Before we do that, I do want to add one more quick thing, just as a reminder that when we think of nature, some people want more of the spiritual aspect. And if that's something that you are interested in, I would encourage everyone to explore your roots, your heritage, what's prominent in your community. Oftentimes within ecotherapy, there are typically white people who maybe have borrowed practices from other cultures. And I would encourage you instead to look at in within your own culture. For example, I am Jewish, and Jewish people have one day that they honor trees, which I think is wonderful, and that shows my cultural and familial tradition of honoring trees. So just wanted to share that out.
Okay, well, let's take a moment to look at Mother Nature.
So the tree is beautiful, and I'm admiring the plants right next to it. That's truly a beautiful sight. That's what I have looked in and seen. I don't know what it's trying to tell me, but if anything, to look at nature more frequently and use that as a place to settle and feel calm. Mallory's right. I think just by looking at this plant, there's that sense of calm. What message did you guys receive?
Just to pause, this is Mallory, to pause and breathe.
Summer here. Absolutely. I think that it's okay to be quiet, that we sometimes feel like we need to fill every nook and cranny of our lives. And instead, sometimes you can just be and breathe.
This is Melissa. I know sometimes that silence can be a little bit awkward, but just being calm and just saying it's okay. Thank you.
Mallory here, sure. And with people inside a building and you feel like sometimes you have to talk to people, whereas where if you go out in nature, you don't always feel like you need to fill the space. So it's interesting. think nature encourages us to be quiet.
That is so true. Thank you so much. I've learned something new today. And if you have any final thoughts that you want to put out there before we wrap up,
No, if you do want to connect with nature, I'd say just as a reminder, do whatever feels good to you. Find that certain spot that has always called your name. Maybe it's in a park or something that has piqued your interest. If you want to check it out, block out the time, maybe just 15 minutes. It can be really powerful and it's can also be just really simple.
and this is Sarah, I just want to say connect with the community, connect out with nature, go out with your friends. And if you see an opportunity, I would start traveling. Just, I'm going to start traveling in 2 weeks. So check out my website. Hopefully, I'll be able to connect with all of you out there.
Well, Sarah, I did take a few wonderful experiences with Summer as with her as my guide. So thank you. Thank you. I strongly suggest it.
Yes, thank you.
Of course.